You're driving across Wyoming, the land stretches out forever. It's wide open, mostly flat, then rolling hills. You see mountains far off. But out here, in the middle of nowhere, just east of Laramie, something big and out of place stands. It's a pyramid. Not a pointy, sharp pyramid like the ones in Egypt, more like a squat, broad pyramid. It's made of big, rough cut granite stones. It sits on a low hill, kind of just watching the wind blow. This isn't ancient Egypt, this is Wyoming. So, what is this thing? Why is it here? It's called the Ames Monument, and it's a mystery to a lot of people who just happen to drive by. It's a monument to two brothers, Oakes and Oliver Ames. You might not know their names today, but back in the 1800s, they were very powerful men. They helped build something huge, something that changed America. They helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. Imagine America right after the Civil War. The country was healing, but it was also looking west. People wanted to move, they wanted to settle new lands, they wanted to find gold, and they needed a way to get there. Before the railroad, it was a long, hard journey by wagon. It took months. It was dangerous. The idea of a railroad that went all the way across the country, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, seemed impossible. It was a dream, but some people made that dream real. The Union Pacific Railroad was one of the companies building it. They were pushing west from Omaha, Nebraska. It was tough work. They built tracks over plains, through mountains, across rivers. They faced bad weather, lack of supplies, and sometimes conflict. It was a massive undertaking. One of the biggest projects in American history at that time. The Ames brothers were key to this. They were not the engineers who laid the track, they were the money men. They were the ones who made sure the project kept going. They had a lot of money themselves, and they got other people to invest. They were powerful, influential. They believed in the railroad. They saw its future. They saw how it would connect the country. They saw how it would make them rich. This monument is a silent reminder of that time. It's a block of history stuck in the modern landscape. It doesn't scream for attention. It just sits there, weathered by the sun and the wind. It's a very unusual structure for its purpose. Most monuments to people are statues or tall obelisks. This one is different. It's broad and strong. It's made of local granite. It looks like it belongs to the earth around it, even though its shape is so out of place. When you see it, you feel its age. You think about the people who built it. You think about the vast effort it represents. It's not just a pile of stones. It's a symbol of ambition, of hard work, of grand ideas. And also, a symbol of some complicated history, too. Because the story of the Ames brothers and the railroad isn't all shiny and heroic. There are shadows in it, there was scandal, there was controversy, but for now, just look at it. This granite pyramid out on a low hill in Wyoming. It's quiet, it's strong, and it makes you wonder. What is its full story? Why did someone decide to put such a unique marker in such a remote spot? And how did this place become so special that two powerful men got a pyramid dedicated to them? That's what we need to figure out. It starts with the railroad itself, the giant project that carved a path through the wilderness and brought America together. And it starts with the men who made it happen. The Ames Monument stands because of the Transcontinental Railroad. You can't talk about one without the other. This railroad was a huge deal. It was a promise to connect the East and the West. Before it, traveling across the country was a serious journey. It could take months. It was dangerous. People walked, rode horses, or went by wagon train. It was slow. It was hard. Then came the idea of a railroad. Two companies were tasked with building it. The Central Pacific started from California, heading east. The Union Pacific started from Nebraska, heading west. They were in a race. Every mile of track meant more land, more money, and more glory. The U.S. government helped a lot. They gave the companies land and money for every mile they built. It was a big incentive. Building the Union Pacific line was a huge job. It wasn't just laying track. It was surveying the land, finding the best routes, building bridges over rivers. Blasting tunnels through mountains, they needed thousands of workers. Many of them were Irish immigrants. They worked long hours in harsh conditions. The plains could be blazing hot in summer and freezing cold in winter. They faced attacks. They faced accidents. It was tough, dangerous work, but the work pushed forward. The tracks crept across Nebraska, then into Wyoming. This is where the Ames Monument comes into the story. The Union Pacific had to cross the Laramie Mountains. They found a high point, a pass. It was the highest point on the original line. This place was called Sherman Summit. It was over 8,200 feet high. It was a huge achievement to get the tracks up there. At this summit, the Union Pacific wanted to honor the men who made it all possible. Not the workers who laid the rails, though they deserved credit too. They wanted to honor the men at the top, the ones who raised the money, the ones who pushed through the problems, the ones who had the vision. Those men were Oakes and Oliver Ames. The Ames brothers were from Easton, Massachusetts. They came from a family that made shovels. Good shovels. They made their fortune in manufacturing. They were smart businessmen. They knew how to make things. They knew how to make money. And they knew how to get things done. When the Transcontinental Railroad was getting started, it needed serious financial backing. It wasn't just a simple construction project. It was a national endeavor. The government offered help, but private money was still key. The Ames brothers stepped in. Oakes Ames especially became deeply involved. He was a congressman from Massachusetts. This gave him influence in Washington. He used that influence to help the Union Pacific. He invested a lot of his own money, he convinced others to invest, he pushed for the project in Congress. He made sure the Union Pacific had what it needed. His brother, Oliver Ames Jr., became president of the Union Pacific Railroad. So, one brother was making sure the money and political support were there. The other was running the day-to-day operations of the company. They were a powerful team. Without their push, their money, their belief, the Union Pacific might have stalled. The railroad might not have been finished as quickly, or it might not have been finished at all. They really were central figures. They saw the big picture. They understood what connecting the country would mean. For trade, for settlement, for the future of America. So, when the Union Pacific reached its highest point in Wyoming, it felt like a good place to remember these men. It's a place where the struggle was real, where the achievement was clear, a place that symbolized the conquering of the landscape. It was a high spot, a place of triumph, and it was there that the company decided to build a monument. Not just any monument, but a big, strong, lasting one. A pyramid, to stand against the elements in time, just like the railroad itself. The Ames Monument is named for Oakes and Oliver Ames. But who were these men, really? And why a monument to them specifically out in the middle of Wyoming is not just about their money and their leadership. Their story gets a bit complicated, even a bit dark. Oakes and Oliver Ames were part of a successful New England family. Their grandfather, also named Oliver Ames, started a shovel manufacturing business in the late 1700s. It became very successful. The Ames family shovels were known for their quality. They were used everywhere, including during the California Gold Rush. This family business made the Ames brothers rich and powerful long before the railroad. They were already established figures. Oakes Ames was the older brother. He was born in 1807. Oliver Ames Jr. was born in 1808. They were close in age and worked together in the family business. Oakes was known for being a bit more aggressive, a mover and shaker. Oliver was perhaps more steady, more administrative. When the Civil War came, they made even more money selling shovels and other goods. They had a lot of capital. After the war, the big dream was the Transcontinental Railroad. Oakes Ames, as a powerful industrialist, was drawn to it. He saw the potential, he understood the scale. In 1863, President Lincoln asked him to get involved with the Union Pacific. The project was struggling to find money and leadership. Lincoln reportedly told Oakes, "Take hold of this. It is the greatest enterprise of the age." Oakes took that to heart. He became a director of the Union Pacific. He invested heavily. He convinced his brother Oliver to get involved too. Oliver became the president of the company. But Oakes, with his political connections as a congressman, helped pass bills that gave more support to the railroad. He was a master at getting things done, both in business and in politics. But the story isn't just about their vision and success. It's also about a scandal, a big one. It was called the Credit Mobilier Scandal. This is where things get messy for the Ames brothers. Here's the simple version of what happened. The Union Pacific Railroad formed a separate construction company. They called it Credit Mobilier of America. The idea was that this construction company would build the railroad for the Union Pacific. But the people who owned Credit Mobilier were largely the same people who owned the Union Pacific, including Oakes Ames. This meant they could basically pay themselves. Credit Mobilier charged the Union Pacific huge amounts of money for the construction work, more than it actually cost. This made a lot of profit for Credit Mobilier, and since the Ames brothers and other Union Pacific directors owned Credit Mobilier stock, they made a lot of money personally. This was a conflict of interest, a big one. To protect this scheme, Oakes Ames gave shares of Credit Mobilier stock to other congressmen. He sold them the stock at a price far below its real value, or sometimes he just gave it to them. The idea was to buy their silence, to make sure they wouldn't ask too many questions about how the railroad was being built and funded. The scandal broke in 1872. It caused a huge public outcry. People were furious. It looked like corruption at the highest levels. Oakes Ames was put on trial in Congress. He was found guilty of disgraceful conduct. He wasn't expelled, but he was censured. That meant a formal condemnation. He died shortly after, a disgraced man in the public eye, even though many still saw him as a hero for getting the railroad built. Oliver Ames Jr. wasn't as directly involved in the stock distribution, but he was president of the Union Pacific and benefited from the scheme. His reputation was also damaged. So, why build a monument to men tied to such a scandal? The Union Pacific directors pushed for it. It was a way to honor their actual work. They had, after all, gotten the railroad built. They poured their own money and effort into it. The monument was perhaps a way to say, despite the controversy, these men achieved something great. It was a recognition of their immense contribution to a national project, overshadowing the means by which some of them enriched themselves. The monument was designed by a famous architect, Henry Hobson Richardson. He was known for his big, strong, Romanesque style. For the sculptures of the Ames brothers on the pyramid, they hired another famous artist, Augustus St. Gaudens. He was a top sculptor of his time. This was no cheap, quick memorial. It was a serious piece of art and engineering put in a very prominent place on the railroad line. It was built to last. Building the Ames Monument was not a simple task. This wasn't downtown Boston. This was the Wyoming Territory in the late 1800s, a wild, remote place. It required a lot of effort and skill. First, the location. The Union Pacific picked Sherman Summit. This was the highest point on the original Transcontinental Railroad line. It was a big deal to get the tracks up to this elevation. It was a place of triumph. So it made sense to put a major monument there. The monument would stand right next to the tracks, visible to everyone on the trains. The design itself was unique. Henry Hobson Richardson, the architect, was famous. He chose a pyramid shape. It's not smooth. Like the Egyptian pyramids, it's made of large, rough-hewn granite blocks. Each block is huge. They give the monument a raw, powerful look. It feels like it grew right out of the land. The pyramid is about 60 feet high. Its base is about 60 feet square. It's a substantial structure. Getting the materials was the next big challenge. The granite came from a quarry nearby. Not far from Sherman Summit, in the Laramie Mountains, the stone had to be cut from the earth. Then, it had to be moved. Imagine moving these massive blocks of stone in the 1880s. They likely used oxen or horses to drag them to the construction site. It was slow and hard work. Then came the sculpting. The pyramid itself is simple, but on two of its faces there are large round medallions. These are portraits of Oakes and Oliver Ames. These were created by Augustus St. Gaudens. He was one of the best sculptors in America at the time. He carved the detailed faces of the brothers into the granite. These portraits were likely done on site or brought to the site and installed. It shows the commitment to quality and artistry. It also shows how important the Ames brothers were seen to be by the Union Pacific. The construction took time. It started in 1881 and was finished in 1882. It wasn't just building the pyramid. It was also preparing the site, making sure the foundation was strong enough to hold all that weight. Remember, the weather in Wyoming can be extreme. Blizzards in winter, strong winds all year round. The monument had to be built to withstand all of that, and it has. It's been standing there for over 140 years. The finished monument was dedicated on June 8, 1882. It was a big event. Dignitaries from the Union Pacific and other important people came by train. It was a grand statement placed right at the railroad's highest point. It was meant to be seen. It was meant to be remembered. But here's a twist in the story. The railroad engineers are always looking for better routes, easier grades. In 1901, about 20 years after the monument was built, the Union Pacific decided to change its route. They found a new lower pass through the mountains. This new route was about 3 miles south of Sherman Summit. This change had a huge effect on the monument. Suddenly, the main railroad line no longer passed right by it. The trains stopped going by. The monument was no longer on the main thoroughfare. It became isolated. It was no longer a prominent landmark seen by every passenger. It was left alone on its little hill overlooking a now unused stretch of track. This explains why it feels so remote today. If you go to see it, you have to drive off the main road. You have to look for it. It's not on I-80. It's not directly visible from the major highway. It's tucked away. This isolation adds to its mystery. It makes you wonder even more. Why is this here? It was once a central point. Now it's a quiet reminder of a past route, a past era. The decision to reroute the tracks, while practical for the railroad, left the Ames Monument as a silent sentinel, watching over a history that moved on without it. Today, The Ames Monument stands much as it did when it was finished in 1882. It's still there, on its little hill in Wyoming. Well, it's still made of rough-cut granite. The faces of Oakes and Oliver Ames still look out from the stone medallions. But it's not the busy place it once was. The rerouting of the Union Pacific tracks in 1901 changed everything for the monument. It went from being a prominent landmark right next to a busy rail line to a quiet, often missed piece of history. For years, it was just there. The wind blew around it. Snow covered it in winter. The sun beat down on it in summer. Not as many people saw it. It became a bit forgotten by the general public. But it didn't disappear. It was too solid for that, and its importance was not entirely forgotten. In 1966, the Ames Monument was designated a National Historic Landmark. This means the U.S. government recognized its special place in American history. It helped protect the monument and bring some attention back to it. Today, if you want to visit it, you have to make a bit of an effort. You usually drive along a gravel road from the small community of Buford, Wyoming. Or you take a scenic detour off I-80. When you get there, it's often very quiet. You might be the only one there. The feeling is different than seeing a monument in a city. Here, you are really out in the open. The wide Wyoming sky is above you. The winds often whip around. When you stand next to it, you can touch the rough granite. You can see the details in St. Gaudens's sculptures of the Ames brothers. Their faces are weathered but still clear. You can feel the weight of history in those stones. You think about the men it honors, with all their complexities, the genius, the drive, the ambition, and the controversy that followed them. The monument is a reminder of a huge moment in American history, the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. It tells a story of innovation, hard work, and the drive to connect a vast country. It reminds us how difficult that task was, how it took big ideas and big money, and how it changed the nation forever. It also reminds us that history is not always simple. The men who built the railroad were not perfect. They were human. They made mistakes. They were involved in scandals. But their impact was undeniable. The monument, in its stoic, unmoving way, holds all of that history. It doesn't judge. It just exists. For people who live nearby or those who study railroad history, the Ames Monument is a treasured spot. It's a place where you can connect with the past in a very real, tangible way. It's not just words in a book. It's a physical thing, made of stone, that has stood for over a century. The pyramid shape itself makes you think. Why that shape? It's often associated with ancient power, with lasting memory. The Ames Monument is certainly that. It's a powerful, lasting memorial to two men who shaped America. Even if their names aren't on every tongue today, their mark on the landscape and on the nation's history is permanent. So, the next time you hear about Wyoming, or you're driving through that vast, beautiful state, remember the quiet pyramid on the hill. Remember the Ames Monument. It's not a mystery for long once you know its story. It's a powerful link to a time when America was truly being built, one track at a time, across mountains and plains. And it stands as a testament to the big dreams and complicated lives of the people who made it happen. It's a guardian of history, standing alone, waiting for you to discover its story.